Welcome. Good afternoon. I'm Tom Sinclair, that VidBlaster guy. Glad to be with you. I guess it's only afternoon if you're watching live. Well, I guess it could be afternoon if you're watching on YouTube in the afternoon, but that's... How do I get sidetracked? I've been in the show 5 seconds and I'm already sidetracking myself. Sorry about that. It's a crazy kind of day. Glad to have you with us if you're watching live. We love having you watching live, and we've got a bunch of guys in the chat room and love having folks in the chat room too. That's the bomb. And if you're not watching us live, we'd love to have you come in and join us because live is just a ton of fun, and you get to be in the chat and hanging out with all these guys. It really is a treat. Today's show, well, actually all of our shows, are based on the premise that one guy with one PC can do one awesome broadcast. Now, obviously, it takes a lot of work, and as you can tell, I am definitely a work in progress. No bones about that. The awesome progress, the awesome broadcast is a goal for which I strive. But it can give you an idea that, it doesn't take a whole lot of expertise. Obviously, I don't have it. It doesn't take a whole lot of high-tech equipment to bring your passion to a broadcast. And you can do it live like we're doing today. You can make it available on YouTube like we'll do later today. You can do it for free on Ustream or some of the other free CDNs. Even YouTube has got an event where a package where you can do it live for free. You can post it live for free later on YouTube, or you can pay for it and have all that stuff done. We're actually streaming live today on Dacast, D-A-C-A-S-T, Dacast.com. They don't pay us anything. They don't give us anything for free. We just think they do a good job, so we mention their name every now and then, Dacast. And, we'll upload this show later on to YouTube so folks can watch it that can't be available live at 2 o'clock Central Daylight Savings Time in Alabama, USA. So glad to have you with us today. Got some really cool things. I've got some great questions that people have posed to me this week that I want to answer about working with Blackmagic Intensity Pro cards and on how to get around VidBlaster's limitation for just 1,000K BPS if you've got the Home Pro or the Studio editions. So we'll get to that in just a second. But before we do, we got a new contest coming up. We have got, and this is going to be a little different. This is a little bit different. I'm not going to ask you to do anything per se. Before, we asked you to make a video about what you do with VidBlaster if you got it for free, and then we've reviewed the videos and we voted on the best one and that kind of. And that was a lot of fun. But as you've heard me say on the recent broadcast, VidBlaster is about to come out with a new beta. For 3 weeks, I've been saying any day now, but it's not here. And I thought, well, maybe we ought to have a raffle. And the winner of the raffle gets a $100 credit towards whatever they want to do with VidBlaster, with that VidBlaster guy. I mean, if you want to upgrade your VidBlaster, or if you don't have it, you want to buy it, or if you want to upgrade from one version to another or from one edition to another, we'll give you $100 credit towards that if you win. It costs you $1, a US dollar, to enter. And the idea is that you pick the day that the new beta, version 3.23, will be released. So if you pick the day, you win. Well, if somebody else picks the day, then we'll put both your names into a hat and draw the winning name out of the hat. But still, it'd be a lot of fun, and we'll do that, on the show after the week when the new beta is released. So if it gets released tomorrow, I guess you'd have to enter real quickly. So you may or may not want to guess tomorrow as the day. Although this little contest may be just enough to tilt the wagon a little bit so that it rolls downhill and we get a new beta out of it. Because I think there's all sorts of cool stuff that's going to be in this beta. This is going to be a big beta. This is a big beta. This is not a baby beta. This is not just a little minor bug fix beta. This is going to be a cool new features coming in. And we got the new streamer Streamer version 3, which is going to be hot. Hot, hot, hot. If you've missed out on that, we did a show on that. Let's see, when was it? Last week. Yeah, last week. It was just last week when we did that, because we talked about the streamer is going to have the ability to use a different audio codec. The AAC codec will now be built into the streamer. That's going to be super cool. So that means that you can stream without having to have it re-encoded for iOS devices. I know our feed right now today goes to Dacast. And if you've got a Flash, if you've got a regular desktop or something like that, and you can watch it in Flash, then you watch our regular feed. We also have a sort of a light version of the show that's only like 284 by 144 or some numbers like that at 30 frames a second, 300K BPS. So it's pretty lightweight in terms of bandwidth. So folks that are traveling and want to watch us on their iPad or their iPhone can do that. And Dacast will re-encode it so that you get the audio as well. So that's pretty cool. But in the future, the near future, VidBlaster will be able to do that so that anybody that can hear the AAC codec can do it. And I've got some clients out there that are waiting with bated breath for this too, because they've been having to re-encode stuff or have their CDN do it for us. So this next beta is going to be really a landmark beta, I think, in that regard. And we will be reviewing it when it comes out. Now, to enter the contest, let's see, where's the URL? You have to go to, whoops, boy, I planned this all up in pre-show, and I said, I need to do this in a black font, and then of course it doesn't show up. Oh, and the white doesn't show up either. Well, let's take that off and let's try. VidBlaster has the ability to do live text kind of on the fly, and I really like that. Let's see if this was enough to get it up there. Oops, right in the middle of my head. We'll just do it live so that by the time I do all this, you'll have already gotten there. Is that too big? Yeah. EasternShoreBroadcasting.com. That's kind of our parent company now that handles Streaming Idiots and that VidBlaster guy, and it's going to be doing some other stuff locally. So Eastern Shore Broadcasting, if you go to EasternShoreBroadcasting.com, on the right-hand side, one of those little, what do you call those little boxes on the right? A little box thing on the right. Anyway, that's where you enter the contest. It'll cost you $1, and you pick your date, and I'll record all the dates, and it's, if you're the first one to pick that date, you don't have the advantage over somebody that picks it after you. So you can enter whenever you want to, and you can enter as many times as you like to, but don't do it all for the same day. That would be silly. But pick a variety of days. And you may say, okay, well, I got $10. I'm going to just roll the dice on the next 10 days. And then, somebody else has $10, wants to do the same thing, then we'll draw your name out of the hat live on this show the next Wednesday after the beta is released. Oh, wouldn't that be cool if they released it on a Wednesday morning and we got to draw for the contest that afternoon? That would be cool. I guess it would be Wednesday afternoon in Holland, although it could be Wednesday morning, which would be the middle of the night for us. But anyway, I digress. So enter the contest if you like. It'll cost you $1. You can do it by PayPal, which means you can put $1 on your credit card, or you can take it out of your PayPal account. And I know I'm gonna lose money on this deal. I know I'm not gonna have 100 entries, but I tell you what, if I get more than 100 entries, which I don't think I will, I'll give all of it to the winner in terms of credit towards their purchase. So if we get $200 worth of entries, it'll be a $200 contest. But it's guaranteed to be at least 100. So I'll kick in up to 100. And this probably has some sort of, we're probably breaking some laws in a bunch of different countries, but we're small potatoes. Nobody is interested in our little contest. At least I hope not. So if you happen to work for a governmental agency that that says this is illegal or needs a license or disclosure or something like that, just turn me off and pretend like you didn't see this. Anyway, it'll be a lot of fun. So easternshorebroadcasting.com, and we'll put that up again towards the end of the show just to remind you to enter. Had some really cool questions this week from actual users who were struggling with some things in VidBlaster. And, sometimes things are just like so simple, it's like falling off a log. One of the things that I loved about VidBlaster initially was that it was so easy to use. The learning curve, the learning curve in VidBlaster was like nothing. You load a camera into a camera module, you click on the module, it appears in the program window, and you click on the streamer and it streams, and you click on the recorder and it records, and it's done. It's remarkably intuitive, I think. But not everything is intuitive. The more complicated you get, the more you get into it. Mike Versteeg, the developer, can't anticipate every possible combination and make it all super intuitive. At some point, it has to end up, going back to just, nickel and dime menus. And so that's when sometimes people begin to struggle because they say, okay, what do I do? Where do I start? It all felt good and intuitive up until this point, and then all of a sudden I kind of hit a wall because I was trying to do something that I thought was pretty simple, but turns out behind the scenes is really pretty complex. And that's what happens sometimes. So in this case, this particular person had a PC that it's an interesting story, which really, if you do troubleshooting a lot, this is the kind of stuff that'll drive you crazy. He had actually cloned a hard drive from another PC and built a PC with the exact same specs as the other PC that the drive was cloned from, and had all the same same motherboard, same video card, same RAM, or so we think. And then things weren't working the way they worked on the other system. And I was like, oh golly, cloning. I know VidBlaster can sense new hardware at that point, and we'll kind of say, and we'll revert back to the trial version. Actually, in some cases, if you install new hardware in there, because it thinks you're trying to pirate it by cloning it. And essentially, that's what this guy had done. I mean, he hadn't done it intentionally. But and he wanted to buy a license. That's why he came to me. He wanted to buy a version 2 license. If you want a version 2 license, they're still available. Some people like version 2. They just want to stay with it. And so we were having trouble getting the license registered. I mean, it didn't want to take it. And we had to go through some machinations on that. Basically, we took the VidBlaster 2.27 that was already on his cloned hard drive, and we uninstalled it. And then I sent him the installer for version 2.27 that I had saved from the VidBlaster forum download section. It's not there available any longer, but if you need it, let me know. I'll send it to you. And that was able to get us going. And then he had some problems doing the activation, and we worked around that. And that was just all. That's kind of one-off stuff. And then we got into the actual cameras. He had an Intensity Pro card in there, and he had not updated the drivers or done anything other than just, he cloned the hard drive. And so, VidBlaster wasn't seeing the Intensity Pro. The Media Express from Blackmagic wasn't seeing the Intensity Pro. And so we knew we had some issues. So basically, we just said, okay, uninstall all those Blackmagic drivers and install again. And that worked. And then, again, what did we have to? I think he had to update the firm. Yeah, I think he had to update the firmware on the card. It was an older card. And then he got the image in. And he was trying to do it with HDMI, and that wasn't working, and went over to component, and that worked. And I've had experience with that before in some of the older cards. The older Intensity Pro cards would only work on component. I never was able to get them to work with the HDMI out, or in, rather. And so that was the other thing. Boy, it's all coming back to me now. And he didn't have a camera source, so he was using a DVD player that had HDMI out. And he was using that as the video in for the Intensity Pro card. And I said, I just don't think that's going to work. That's not a good way for us to test it. We need a cleaner video in that's not going to be so full of potential other problems. And so finally, he was able to get a camera that had component and hooked it up component and got component video appearing in Media Express, but it wouldn't appear in VidBlaster. And so we went through the settings. Now again, this is version 2 of VidBlaster. So the camera modules were a little different back then than they are now. Back then in version 2, you had camera modules version 1 and version 2, and now you have camera modules version 1 and version 3. But we were using camera module version 2, and we had selected the video device, which never came up as Intensity Pro, always came up as Decklink, which I think is kind of unusual, because if you go into the video out, it'll come up as Intensity Pro as one of your video out options. But here on the video device in the camera module version 2, it only had Decklink as the option. And so we selected that, and then in addition, you have to select a video input. And hopefully, if I've gotten these backwards, then just interpolate it as you need to. A video input, which would be, I think, the choices for the Intensity Pro were composite and S-video, component, and HDMI. And then I think actually the driver gave you an SDI input option, even though that's not available in the Intensity Pro, because the same drivers work with the Blackmagic Decklink Quad. Boy, am I making more of this than it ought to be. This should have been a really short story. Sorry about this. Anyway, suffice to say, it wasn't working for him. And he said, I've got the frame rate set to auto. I've got the resolution set to auto. I've got the aspect ratio set to auto. Everything should work. And I remember some wise person, probably Martin Kay would be my guess, or Yanakala, saying that in VidBlaster, the auto setting works for a lot with the Intensity Pro, but it doesn't work for one of those 3. And I couldn't remember which one it was. I was thinking it was frame rate, but for some reason we started with resolution. I said, okay, well, what's the resolution in the camera? It's probably, because he didn't know, it's probably 1080i. Frame rate of 59.94 frames a second. So if that's the case, let's set the VidBlaster resolution to 1080. And then that probably means we need to set the frame rate to 2997, since that's going to be progressive, and 5994 would be interlaced. And fortunately, we didn't even get that far. When we set the resolution to 1080, all of a sudden he had an image in the screen, and that's all he wanted. So it was an interesting journey to go from, golly, isn't VidBlaster wonderful and intuitive, to some problems with installations, because he had some hardware idiosyncrasies, that cloned hard drive, which had kind of scrambled the drivers. And then, trying to use different video inputs that really weren't good video inputs for tests, like a DVD player, which could have all sorts of other stuff going on the HDMI cable that would just cause problems for the Blackmagic card. Because otherwise everybody could just, they could just burn their DVDs into VidBlaster, and then they wouldn't have to buy them after they rented them. So I think there was probably something cooking there. Anyway, once we got a good clean camera feed, then we were able to make the connection. So if you're struggling with, boy, this is a long way of saying this, if you're struggling with getting your Blackmagic Intensity Pro card to work with VidBlaster, let's start with the simple stuff first. Number one, check and see if you're doing HDMI. Make sure it's a clean feed from your camera, but also make sure you're plugged into the input, not the output. Number one, the output won't work. Number two, go into the Blackmagic control panel, which should have installed when you installed the drivers, and that'll be in your Windows control panel, and verify that whatever the input is that you're using, if it's HDMI or component or composite or S-video, that the card is actually set to receive that particular input. Because if it's set up for composite and you're using HDMI, it's not going to work. Yeah, Mike has said in the chat room, HDCP. I think that's the protocol or the governmental handcuffs that come with HDMI from a DVD player. That's right, Mike, and thank you for bringing that up. The other thing is that once you get into VidBlaster, then you want to go ahead and set your resolution, and then of course pick the right video device and the right video input compared to what you have, and that should work. If you're having trouble with it, send me a note, tom@thatvidblasterguy.com, and I'll give you my best effort. I sure will. It was fun to work with Jim though this week on that, and we got it. That was the important thing. We got it. We got it right, and that makes a lot of fun. The next question that I want to address that I got this week was somebody had the Pro has the Pro edition of VidBlaster, but really wants to stream at a higher bit rate than what the streamer will allow. I think the streamer maxes out at 1,000 or 950 or something like that in not only the Pro edition, but also in the Home edition and the Studio edition. You can't go faster than 1,000 kbps on your bit rate. And I know this show today is 864 by 480, 30 frames a second. So this is standard definition at a decent frame rate. And we're streaming it on Dacast at 1500 kbps, which according to Jan Ozer is sort of a sweet spot for this particular resolution and frame rate. And also ends up being sort of a sweet spot in terms of CPU usage too, because we're not compressing it a whole lot, so we're not using a whole lot of CPU to compress it. We're actually recording it differently, and I'll get into that another time. But in terms of what we're doing it at 1500. Well, I'm not using VidBlaster Streamer to stream it. I'm actually using the output module to send video over to Wirecast, and I'm letting Wirecast do the streaming and recording. And I'm actually can't wait for version 3.23 to see how that is different. But Wirecast does a better job of encoding and streaming with lower CPU usage than Flash Media Live Encoder. So that's kind of what the comparison is there. It's not a VidBlaster Wirecast comparison, but rather a Flash Media Live Encoder versus Wirecast comparison on the encoding part of it. So anyway, the question was, sorry, I go way off topic, because I've got so much information I want to share with you, and I think, oh golly, I need to say this because there are folks that don't know what I'm talking about, and so I need to kind of build that foundational base. So I appreciate your patience with me on that. Anyway, so VidBlaster will not stream faster than 1000 kbps if you've got the Home Pro or Studio editions, at least in the current version 3.22 or lower. If you have the broadcast, yeah, you can go up to 3 or 4 or 5,000, whatever the limits are. But the workaround is this: since VidBlaster uses Flash Media Live Encoder, which is a free download from Adobe, version 3.2 is the latest version, which of course, as you recall, is not being supported anymore by Adobe. It's an orphan. It's been abandoned. It's not going anywhere. It's not getting better. It's just there. But that will run as a separate program. So you can go to your hard drive and find Flash Media Live Encoder, fire it up, and then use VidBlaster to send the video from VidBlaster over to Flash Media Live Encoder. And you would use, if you have the Home Edition, you would use the streamer to do that. You would set the streamer to virtual video device and click on or send or whatever the streamer's go button is. And then in Flash Media Live Encoder, your video device would be, and you gotta get this one right now. Your video device would be simply VidBlaster. Nothing else, just VidBlaster. Don't be confused by other letters after it. If you're using the home edition and you're outputting it through the streamer using the VVD in Flash Media Live Encoder, it's going to be VidBlaster. And that should pick up the video stream right there. It should be the resolution that you're outputting, which would be the resolution that you've set in VidBlaster. And then in Flash Media Live Encoder, you can set the bitrate to your heart's content, whatever the max is. I think it's 25,000 or something, some amazing number like that. Not that you would ever need to, but you could. If you had a 720p feed and you wanted, that's probably going to be 3,000, 3,500, 4,000, something like that. I don't recall what the sweet spot is for that, just because I don't do it, so I'm not familiar with it. If you've got the Pro or the Studio edition of VidBlaster, you may want to do it differently. You can do it that way with the streamer, but you Pro users and Studio users have a new module that the home users don't have. That's why you've got the Pro and Studio editions. It's called the Video Out, or now I think it's just called Output. And Output allows you to send out to Flash Media Live Encoder a video signal that would be entitled VidBlaster VVD. VVD, like in Victory, Victory, David. Not to be confused with VidBlaster, period, end of conversation. So there are two different VVDs that might exist on your PCs, you Pro and Studio Edition users. One would be VidBlaster as a video source. The other would be VidBlaster VVD as a video source. And if whatever it is you have selected is gray, it means you've probably selected the wrong one, or else you haven't turned that module on yet. And so if you're a Pro or Studio user, you've got the output module set to VidBlaster VVD, you've turned it on, you're receiving video in Flash Media Live Encoder at whatever the video size is, the resolution that you're outputting from VidBlaster, and then you can adjust the bitrate to your heart's content. So far as the audio is concerned, you're just going to look for your audio source on your PC, which will be your mixer or your mic or whatever it is that you've got configured there. The same thing that you would have configured in VidBlaster if you were streaming it and wanted to identify an audio source. So that's how to get your to get your bit rate up if you're using VidBlaster and you've got the Home, Pro, or Studio editions, and you want to go faster than 1000K, which if you're doing 864 by 480, I recommend 1500, plus another 128 for audio. So that's it. That's two great tips from that VidBlaster guy. How about that? I think that brings us to the end of our time together. If you're watching us live, we're going to go into segment 2 in just a few minutes, Streaming Idiots. But if you're watching us on YouTube, thanks for tuning in. And you can catch the Streaming Idiot show. We'll post that on Friday, what's today, the 4th, so that would be June 6th. We'll post that at some point on June 6th, so you can come back and watch that, have something fun to watch for the weekend. Don't forget about our contest. You'll want to go to Eastern Shore Broadcasting, and enter the contest. You can win $100 or more in credit towards a VidBlaster purchase here at that VidBlaster guy. And if we end up with more than 100 entries, whatever dollars we get, we'll turn back around and put into the contest, and we'll cover it up to $100. So go to Eastern Shore Broadcasting and enter. The contest is, if you joined us late, the contest is to pick the release date of the upcoming super beta from VidBlaster, version 3.23, that's got all sorts of cool stuff in it that we keep waiting to be released any day. It'll probably be released tomorrow, and our contest will be a bust. But that's okay because it'll be released tomorrow, and that's good stuff. So enter the contest. It'll cost you $1. And, if it's released tomorrow and you pick next week, well, then you lose. Sorry. Anyway, Eastern Shore Broadcasting, that's a new the headquarter home for that VidBlaster guy and Streaming Idiots. I'm Tom Sinclair, that VidBlaster guy. It's been great to have you with us on the show today. We hope you'll join us again in the future. Meanwhile, check us out on YouTube and shoot me an email. And, if you think about it, go ahead and oh, golly, you can't see that, can you? Well, let me just go to green screen. Let's try again. Follow us on Twitter, at VidBlaster Guy, and you can get tweets to remind you that the show's about to go on. And subscribe to us on YouTube, that VidBlaster Guy, and you'll also get little emails telling you when we've posted something new so you don't miss out on any of it. So anyway, that's the story there. I'm Tom Sinclair, that VidBlaster Guy. It's been a treat to be with you today. Thank you for taking time to tune in. If you're watching live, hang on for the intermission, popcorn, courtesy of Tommy House. And we'll see you next week. Thanks.